send 21 high school teachers from Taiwan to Fraser University to study for 5 weeks during the summer, and they came home safely after, I believe to be a great journey. And so I really would like to take this opportunity to thank the Ministry of Education. Secondly, I'd like to thank all the 21 participating teachers for their help in making this conference possible. Upon returning from Canada, all the teachers had to go back to their school, start teaching right away. And then, in the middle of the semester, we, from our university, are forcing the teachers to get prepared to present at this conference. And so, out of their busy, very, very busy schedule, they all worked very hard in making this conference possible. So I'd like to take a moment to thank them also. And quite a few teachers are here today, so if you would like to talk to them about their experience during the break or after the conference, feel free to contact them. And we hope that as this project continues this year and the years to come, we hope to involve more teachers from all regions in Taiwan. So if throughout the conference you have any questions, feel free to come and talk to any of us here in the front. And we hope that we'll do our best to help you. All right, so without taking any more delay, I would like to introduce our first speaker today, Ms. Helen Erickson. She is a very experienced teacher and teacher educator from Fraser University. She taught for many years, and she has a lot of great experience. So we're very lucky to invite her from all the way in Canada. And she was also one of the many instructors that our participating teachers had interactions with. And so with this opportunity, I would like to invite Ms. Helen Erickson to give a topic on the most current teaching practices, effective teaching practices in English teaching. Let's welcome Ms. Erickson.
Thank you and good morning. I'd like to just repeat what Angela said. It's Saturday morning. I am so impressed to see so many educators and so many students. It is very inspiring how passionate you are about teaching and learning. I'd like to say just a quick thank you to the Ministry of Education for inviting me here to Taiwan. It has been an incredible experience, as well as to NTNU for their hospitality. And thank you as well to the participating teachers, because it has been so exciting to come here from Vancouver to see what you have done in your classroom. And thank you to everybody who are here today, because these teachers truly have gone on a journey. And the best part of a journey sometimes is being able to show people your pictures and to tell your story. And without you being here to listen to their stories, it may not help them complete their journey. So thank you for being a part of this process. Today my contribution will be to talk about some of the big ideas that are taking place in teaching and learning. And then the teachers, as they do their presentation, you will see that many of them are using these big ideas in their classrooms and implementing these practices every day. So please make sure you ask them lots of questions. So our topic so far this morning is going to be the emerging trends to the shifting landscape of education in the 21st century. We know that the world is changing rapidly, and as the world outside our classrooms changes, we have to see some changes taking place inside our classrooms. One of the things I always do at the beginning of a lesson, no matter what I'm teaching, is always talk about the goals. Why are we here today? What are we working towards? We're going to be here for about an hour. What will I walk away with in an hour? So here are some goals for this morning's presentation. I'm going to start by doing a quick activity to activate your personal mental model of effective teaching and learning. Your mental model is what you believe in your head, what you value about teaching. We usually teach based on our beliefs and values, so when we start thinking about what an effective teaching practice is, a good starting place is to think about what you already know about effective teaching. We're going to do some processing activities today. That means we're going to have some opportunities to hopefully learn some new information measurement model. What I'm going to be asking you to do today is to compare effective teaching practices to determine what the common characteristics of all of these teaching practices that we are presenting to you today. At the end of today's presentation, I will ask you to make a decision about what you feel are the 10 most essential teaching practices for you. So as you're going through the presentation, and you're constantly thinking, what is going to work for me? What is most important for me? What can I use in my classroom? And finally, we're going to do a quick transforming activity before you go today. I hope that you will make a commitment to try at least one thing in your classroom. I'm not going to ask you to go home and on the weekend spend hours and hours and hours and hours revising everything that you already do. Maybe just pick one thing that will work nicely with all the fantastic things you are already doing in your classroom. During today's presentation, if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to tweet. If you're using Twitter, you can tweet during the presentation or you can tweet after. If you are going to use Twitter, if you could please send your messages to @BeyondBCBorders and put the hashtag #NTNU2012. If you are not using Twitter yet, this might be a bit of encouragement to maybe go and investigate how Twitter works. There are amazing educators online, and they are constantly sharing their resources through Twitter. So a little gentle nudge. If you're not on Twitter yet, might be a good time to start. As well, if you would prefer not to sign up for an account, perhaps you already have dozens of accounts online and you don't need another one, you can go to the website www.walwisher.com/wall/no-schools-and-islands. It is an online posting board. You do not need any type of membership to be involved. All you do is double-click on the screen. It will give you a post-it note, and you can post your question. I can answer it, or anybody who has attended any of the conferences this weekend, they can also respond. And take a moment to think quickly about what you already know about effective teaching and learning. I always want to start a class where the students already are. You are very wonderful, experienced individuals. We can start building on that experience. What I'd like you to do is just turn and talk to someone behind you, someone beside you. Maybe just say, hi, good morning, how are you? And ask them what they think a powerful or memorable learning experience is. I will put some questions on the screen to help guide your discussion if you find it helpful. For the next minute, if you could turn and talk to someone behind you or beside you, what do you think is necessary to create powerful or memorable learning experiences? You can talk to the person beside you. So hopefully you had a chance to at least say hi to the person beside you. Maybe you had an opportunity to start talking about memorable and powerful learning experiences. Did you notice when I first asked you to talk to the person beside you that the room became very quiet? And then slowly we saw people turn to the person beside them and start talking. And it's very interesting as a teacher. You just need about 3 students to do it. Because as soon as one person starts talking, everyone else starts feeling a little bit more relaxed, and they realize, yes, it's okay, I can talk. And so the volume of the room goes up just a little bit. Whenever you are giving your students in your class an opportunity to turn and talk, one of the hardest things as a teacher to do is just be patient. Wait for it to happen. If they don't start talking right away, just keep counting to 10 in your head. Just keep counting. And don't disturb them, and don't say anything, because otherwise what they learn, if they wait longer than you, they don't have to engage. Because if every time they don't instantly react and you jump in and you take over for them, they're like, the teacher will do all the work for me, no problem. But you just want to wait. What you will probably notice is that the volume in the room will go up. And people will start talking and chatting, and then the volume will go down. Because they probably finished talking about what you asked them to talk about. But I still want to wait. Because if I say, okay, ready, here we go, all they've done is a little bit of thinking. They've only given the obvious answer, or they've given a very short answer. If you are patient, wait again, the volume will go back up. At that second interval, the students will be thinking harder and trying to push themselves. Oh, she's not talking yet, or he's not talking yet. I guess I should keep talking to the person beside me, and they're pushing them to use more language and to think a little bit more. Again, you'll hear the volume go down. This is the second time the volume has gone down. Again, be patient. It's not finished yet. The third time that the volume goes up, that's when you want to catch them, and that's when you want to stop them. Because probably by the time you get to that third interval, that's where they're actually doing their greatest amount of thinking. Because they've had to really dig deep down. Oh, what else can I say about this topic? And what you move them is from the obvious answer to a deeper thinking answer. And those are the answers you want to have class discussions about. So there's a really quick way to use turn and talk in your classroom. Okay, so we're going to move on today, and we're going to build on your ideas about an effective teaching and learning. Remember, your goal today is to decide what you think is the most effective teaching practice for you. So my most memorable learning experience in about the last 6 years happened at a retirement party. I was working in a school that was brand new. It had only been open 1 year, and it was in a part of Vancouver where not many teachers wanted to teach. So many of the teachers were young teachers, maybe only 5 years teaching experience. But there was one teacher at our school who was very experienced, who was at the end of his career, and this was his retirement party, and we were all very excited to go because we're thinking, oh wow, maybe this will be me soon one day. I will get to go relax at home. At his retirement speech, he looked at us and he said, well, good luck. And we thought, what? And he said, when I started teaching, I thought I knew how to do my job. I felt really prepared to go into the classroom. But now, things are changing so quickly. The students are changing, the technology is changing, the whole world is changing. We're moving into a knowledge-based economy. I am preparing students for jobs that do not even exist yet. I don't know how to do my job. And he said it was a very ironic situation to be in, that he was leaving his career feeling like he didn't understand the job he had been doing for most of his life. So for us, this is very perplexing, a little scary. If he doesn't know what teaching looks like, well, what about us? start to realize that yes, the world is changing and things are shifting and changing in education, but there is evidence to show that some of the things that we do every single day, maybe without even knowing it, are very effective things. And if we can focus on those building blocks, the things that maintain in teaching and learning for centuries, if we can be doing the things in our classrooms that work every single day, we can help our students and we can feel more satisfied in our jobs. What we're going to look at today are the 10 most effective teaching practices, and these are the teaching practices that, based on educational research and contemporary theory, these are the practices that we cannot afford to ignore. We can't afford to ignore them because they make our jobs more satisfying and they help our students to be more successful. Now, these teaching practices are open for debate. These 10 teaching practices were decided on about a panel of 6 educational professionals. And what we did is we sat down and we looked at a whole bunch of different teaching practices, and we decided which ones we felt were the 10 most effective. You are allowed to agree, you are allowed to disagree, you are allowed to change it. Again, constantly thinking. Maybe this is what somebody else thinks are the 10 most effective teaching practices, but what do you think for your teaching and for your students? Whenever you're making a decision like this, you need some criteria. So here's the criteria that we use to determine if the practices we were looking at were effective. So the first thing, we need practices that improve learning for all students. Maybe you have 40 or 45 students in your class. You do not have time to create individual education plans for all 40 of those learners. So what we need effective teaching practices that are going to work for all 40 students at the exact same time, so that you as a teacher are not going crazy designing different things for everybody. We need practices that increase students' responsibility for their own learning, because we know as they move into today's very dynamic world, if they are not able to be responsible for their own learning, they are going to struggle, because they are probably going to have to learn many new skills as they move into their workplace. We need individuals who can be learners for life. We need teaching practices that will promote active learning and student engagement. We also need ones that provide students with multiple ways to enter into the learning experience. We need multiple ways for them to process. Again, there are 40 different individuals. We want to make sure that they have many ways to access the content that we are teaching. There also needs to be multiple opportunities for them to demonstrate their knowledge. We want to move away from the one-size-fits-all teaching and learning. These teaching practices need to focus on deep learning. How many of us have been in a class and our students say, "Oh, I can't do that. My teacher last year didn't teach me." Yes, they did. I know your teacher from last year. Maybe you forgot. We don't have time to review. We don't have time to reteach. We all have big curriculums. We need teaching practices that will focus on deep learning so that we do not have to go back and go back and go back. We also need teaching practices that generate opportunities for students to collaborate and work together. We know that in today's world, they will need to be able to work as a part of a team. And finally, these teaching practices must be research-based. There must be evidence to show us that they work. As you listen to the teachers' presentations today, you will see that they are actually creating their own research in their own classrooms to show how it is working. So I'll take a moment to pause here. Do you think that this criteria is acceptable? Is there anything that should be added to this list of criteria? Is there anything that should be taken off the list? So take a quick moment, turn and talk to your partner. Do you agree with this criteria? Do you think that this will help us determine what is an effective teaching practice and perhaps what is not an effective teaching practice? Please take a moment, turn to your partner. Okay, 30 seconds to finish your conversation. Okay, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for speaking to the person beside you. In the interest of time, we're going to keep going. Thank you. It's a very good sign as a teacher. If you're having to wait for people to stop, it's good. It shows that they are engaging and participating. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to do next is we're going to look at two teaching practices. The first one is called backwards design, and the second one is called universal design for learning. So backwards by design is also referred to as beginning with the end in mind. Backwards design is based on the idea that as a teacher, before we start thinking about what we're going to do in our classroom tomorrow, we have to start thinking about what we're going to do in our classroom in 2 weeks. We want to start our lesson planning by thinking about what the end goal will be. What will students need to know, and what will they need to be able to do at the end of my teaching. Then, once I've decided about what my big goals or my big ideas are, I can ask myself the second question. How will I know if students know or are able to do what I was hoping they would be able to know and be able to do? I want to think carefully about my assessment. How will I assess? How often will I assess? Will I do all the assessment, or will the students do some of the assessment? Once I have made connections between my goals and my assessment, that is when I start thinking about my individual lesson plan. Now I start thinking, well, how will I get them closer to that goal? What things can we do in class? What things can they do at home to help build their knowledge so that they are able to perform at the level that I am hoping they can do? So just like this summer, there are many athletes getting ready for the London Olympics. These athletes have a very clear picture of what their goals are. They know what performance they need to be able to achieve. They also know very clearly how their performance will be judged or evaluated. They most likely have very experienced coaches working with them, helping them with their day-to-day training, helping with their mental preparation, helping them prepare for that competition. Backwards by design is the idea that as teachers, we want to create this very clear target for our students at the beginning of the learning experience so they understand why they are doing what they are doing and what they are striving to achieve. So there are some questions that we can ask ourselves as teachers to determine if we are using backwards by design. The first question I'm going to ask myself is, well, what do my students need to know? What do they need to be able to do? Second question that I'm going to ask myself, okay, how will they prove it? What evidence will I be collecting? And then third, how do I get them there? How do I support them every single day to help them achieve their goals? What learning and activities can I use in my classroom to promote that big understanding? So backwards by design is beginning with the end in mind. Universal by design is when we start thinking about the needs of every single learner in the classroom before we plan our lessons. So when we get to the third step of backwards by design, we can start thinking about, okay, so what will I actually do in my classroom? At this point, we start thinking universally. I want to create something that all learners can engage in, that all learners can participate in, that we are all moving towards the same end goal, but I understand that there are individuals in my class who have different needs and different abilities. Universal design came from an actually movement in architecture. This movement began with the idea that if you think of the needs of individuals at the ground level before you even begin construction, then within the design you can address the needs of individual people, and what it ends up with is you create structures that are more usable for every single person. Part of my job in Burnaby is to work with teachers, different grade levels and different content areas in our school. In British Columbia right now, we have many, many students who are coming from many different parts of the world. From Africa, from the Middle East, from Asia. We have international students from Europe, South Africa, South America. And many of those students are in science classes, math classes, business classes, PE classes, and the teachers always come to ask me, what can I do to help the second language learners in my classroom? And my answer always is, do for them what you would do for any student in your class. If you design a lesson to help those students whose language levels are at varying abilities, you will make your lesson more usable, more universal for every single person in your class. So instead of constructing a really good lesson, staying up until about 2 o'clock in the morning, I've got this great lesson, this great activity, I'm so excited to see my students today, and coming in and introducing lesson and then realizing, oh, just a minute, I'll help you. Oh, just a minute, I'll come help you. Wait, let me explain. And you're running all over the room trying to help everybody, keep everybody going, and you realize, oh, why did I spend all this effort? Because we're not actually moving towards our end goal. When we retrofit our lessons, when we try to adapt them as we are teaching them, then we are not creating something that is usable or significant for everyone. What we want to start creating lessons where the design is actually made so that people can enter into the learning experience in different ways. So that there are stairways, elevators, ramps, different supports for the students who need them. A really quick, again, overview of universal design. It is designed so that we decrease teacher frustration and increase student success. If there are supports in place for the students who are struggling, that means that those supports are there for any of your students if they need them. Universal design is built on the idea that content can be accessed from multiple directions in multiple ways. So for example, when I begin the learning experience, I want to provide different ways for my students to activate their background knowledge. What I would like to do is give them many different ways to think about what they already know, and I want to create an activity that everybody can participate in instantly. For example, in the textbook that we use in English 10 in Burnaby, the students need to do a unit on peer pressure and bullying. So instead of starting right away by saying, open your textbook to page 25, we are going to read the story called Accepted, I might begin with an activity like this. And I would just say, please turn and talk to your partner. What do you notice about this picture? Can you please turn and talk to your partner? Okay, so hopefully you had an opportunity to discuss some of the things that you noticed about this image. I don't know if people feel comfortable talking in front of the whole audience, maybe I'll just ask you some questions to see what you were discussing. Just put your hand up if you can answer yes to this question. Did you notice that one flower is taller than the other flower? Did you notice that one flower is a different color? Okay. If you notice, every single person in this audience could participate in this activity. You could get started. You had something to say about the picture. So I'm going to push your thinking just a little bit. Have you ever felt like you stood out in a crowd? Have you ever felt that maybe you were just a little bit different than the people around you? Could you just talk to your partner really quickly? Did you ever have a moment like that? Turn and talk. Thank you very much for sharing their ideas and information with you today. All right. Did you notice that my first question was very easy to answer? Is one flower different? Yes, no? Pretty easy. What I want to do is I want to create that initial entrance into the learning activity, make it easy for everyone to get in. Look at the picture, do you see this? And then I want to push your thinking a little bit more. Okay, has it happened to you? Because it is easier to start thinking from your personal experience. As well, if I can engage my students' emotions, make them remember a time perhaps where they were sad, maybe a time that they were angry or frustrated. Once I start engaging that emotional side of their brain, I can start pulling them into the learning experience a little bit more. After I make connections to their personal ideas, then I can ask them to start thinking about general ideas. Now, big ideas, okay? How do we treat outsiders? Who have been some very famous examples of individuals who were outsiders? How were they treated? Why were they treated that way? Why do we sometimes in our classes bully people? Or why are sometimes people bullied? And now, instead of starting with a piece of reading that only some students can read and respond to, we've created a very common discussion that everyone can be participating in. There's different levels of support here. Sometimes as a teacher, I talk really fast. I get excited, I look at the clock, 15 minutes, and the teacher's like, whoa. But now when I say turn and talk, maybe they can ask the person beside me, what did she say? What are we doing? And so the person beside them can hopefully explain. If not, I can walk around as a teacher and listen to what the students are saying, and I can say, oh, they need a little bit of help. I will stop and talk with these students. So it gives me more opportunity to support all the learners at the same time, even though we're all doing the same activity. The other support that is here is we are working with multilingual individuals who speak more than one language. If right now it is difficult to talk about these ideas in English, then they could use their first language. Again, I have to think about my goal. Is my goal right now to be working on English, or is my goal to activate what they already know so that we can start building the English vocabulary to go with these ideas? If they start by speaking in their first language, then through the lesson I'm going to push them to use more and more English, but as I support them to use more and more English. Think about yourself. If it is very difficult for you to do, are you even going to start the activity? If you know you're going to fail at the beginning, why would you engage? But if you see an opportunity for you to get better and improve, and nobody is going to embarrass you, then there's a greater chance you'll work even harder to be a part of it. So when we look at universal design, we can create learning experiences like this one that support all the learners at the same time, but push to big thinking. I'm not supporting learners by asking easy questions all the time. I want to go from easy to a little bit more challenging. Universal design also gives the idea that we want to give students different ways to acquire knowledge. And our teachers today are going to do a really good example showing you ways that you can acquire knowledge different ways in your classroom. For example, I can use discussion, we can do reading, we can do writing, we can look at visuals, we can look at comic books, we can go on YouTube. Even if I'm using a textbook, I can supplement my textbook with other sources that are easier or more available to the learners in my classroom. I can start with text, movies, articles, pictures, newspapers, magazines that will help my students get better at reading their textbook. I'm not saying don't use your textbook. I'm just saying make that a part of one of the things that you do in your classroom. As well, different ways to process new ideas. Again, we can process ideas by talking to each other in our first language, in English. We can process new ideas by doing some writing. We can process new ideas by doing presentations in front of the class. Always doing different ways to think about the topic that we're working with. One of the strategies the teachers will show you today in their presentation is called heart match. And what they're doing is constantly working with their students to process the new vocabulary, use it in different ways. Another thing that the teachers are going to show you today is different ways for students to express their understanding. For example, they're going to talk about a strategy today called Tableau. And Tableau means that the students can do a frozen picture to represent their learning, but if you have really good speakers in your class, maybe the speakers could narrate the tableau. When we have different ways to acquire knowledge, process knowledge, and express our knowledge, what you are doing is creating support for all different learners in your classroom. Again, moving away from the one size fits all. Finally, in universal design, we want different ways to engage our students in the learning. Remember, we can engage them in the classroom and beyond the classroom by doing things like, today I'd like you to go home, I'd like you to go to Walwisher, and I would like you to post a message, just like I asked you to do today, because hopefully we can engage in the learning even after we leave this room. You can ask your students, I want you to tweet me today, 140 characters. That's not very much. Send me a tweet about what you learned in class today. When you are on your way home, you can be on your phone, checking the tweets. You can come to class tomorrow morning and say, hey, let's check our Twitter feed and let's see how many people tweeted last night. A very good way to create accountability, but also to engage them in the learning that they like. They love their phones. Okay? Use it.
show you a quick classroom example bringing backwards design as well as universal design together. This is my English 10 classroom. This year I had about 27 students. The students in this classroom are facing a very unique challenge. They are students who are moving from the ESL program into mainstream English literature classroom. At the grade 10 level, they have to write a provincial exam. This is the same exam that every student in British Columbia will write, except these students will only have 1 semester of instruction before they write that exam. All the other students will have 3 semesters of instruction. So these students have to make 15 months of academic progress, build their knowledge, vocabulary, and content. 15 months of knowledge in 3. If they are not able to build their vocabulary to a high enough level, they will struggle on the exam, and that exam is used as a part of their decision to go to university or college. So they're facing a unique challenge, and as a teacher, it can feel very overwhelming. Oh my gosh, how can I teach them? All the other teachers have students who have already had 2 semesters of English literature instruction. So I want to create lessons that are meaningful, powerful, that will build knowledge, and that will be really deep learning experiences. Also, I have students who have spoken English in their home countries for many years, and students who are just learning English. So different ages, different language abilities, but we all need to get to that same goal at the same time. So here's the ways that I can use backwards by design or universal design to meet that challenge. First, I have to think about, well, what will my students need to be able to know? What will they need to be able to do on the provincial exam? So, for example, one thing that they're going to need to be able to do is they need to be able to read and understand high-level text. So one thing I can do as a teacher is that they're going to be able to use the 5 question response strategy. The exact strategy I use to get you to think about that flower picture. Did you notice this happen? Why does that happen? Does that happen in the real world? Why does it happen in the real world? Okay, what do we know about this? So I can use the 5 question response strategy as they are doing their reading to test the level of their understanding. Can they answer easy questions? A little bit harder? Can they answer those really tough questions? So my first goal is that they're going to be able to do that. My second goal is that they're going to be able to gather information from multiple texts. Again, we want them to be able to look at a poem, an article, and a story, read all 3 texts, understand the common ideas, and write an essay based on those 3 texts. So I need to make sure that my students know how to gather information from multiple texts. And then finally, I would like to make sure that my students are able to make connections between what they read and their own lives. Connections between text as well as connections to the world. These are the reading strategies I'm going to start with in my class, because if they can do these reading strategies, I can move on to even higher level instruction. So these are my big goals. Once I've got my goals, I need to think about, okay, well, how will I determine if they are able to reach those goals? So we're going to do reading and review response logs, and we're going to do this many, many times. We're also going to do self-compare assessment, and we're going to do a visual representation, but we're going to do this as a part of a group. Again, universal design, I want to make sure I'm supporting them. And finally, there's going to be an individual piece, because there does need to be an individual piece at some point where they show, this is what I can do by myself based on the learning experience. So now I've decided what my assessment is going to be. My third step is, okay, what will I do to help them get there? So I start by saying, okay guys, we have a big goal. In 2 weeks, I want you to be able to answer this question for me. I want you to be able to explain how attitude can impact experience. One reason I picked this question, I did this unit at the beginning of the year, and I really want to make sure at the beginning of the year we start talking about how important a positive attitude is. So throughout the entire semester, I can come back and say, remember that story, that poem, that song that we listened to that was all about having a good attitude? So hopefully we can come back and think about how important that will be. So then I had to think about, well, how am I going to get them there to answer that question? So I found a video clip on YouTube. I found a famous quote. I found a song. And I found a comic. And all of these texts are about attitude and the impacts of a person's attitude on their experience. But again, universal design. Some of my students can read or view all of these texts. No problem. Some of my students are going to find some of these texts difficult, so I tell them, you choose. You pick which ones you want to read and respond to. Pick which ones you want to discuss. Some of them can do all the texts. Some of the students will do some of the texts, and the students who are struggling will at least do one of the texts. But same thing. As a teacher, I don't have to design multiple lessons here. Because the students who are working at a higher level, there's lots of work for them to do. The students who are working at a medium level, lots of work for them to do. The students who are working at the lower level, there's less pressure because they don't have to do all the work, and I can provide some more support. They can also work with the other learners around them. So I'll show you a quick example. Maybe I won't show you a quick example. No. They are on my website. So if you would like to take time, if you go to the effectiveteachingpractices.posters.com, you will see the multiple texts there. So after we've looked at the multiple texts, we've done, again, reading, we've done writing, we've done discussions, we've done some presentations. Now comes the opportunity for students to demonstrate or show what they have learned. What I want to do is create some choice and really encourage them to demonstrate their knowledge using their skills. So one student, what they decided to do is they decided to, as a group, create a collage. So each of them got a piece of a puzzle, and each of them had to write down some of the big ideas they learned from what they had read. Now, really nice. It didn't matter if they read one text, two texts, three texts, four texts, it didn't matter. They could still participate in this group project, even if they had only read or viewed one of the texts. So what they did is they put their puzzle pieces together, and once their puzzle was all together, they said, your attitude can lead to a happy and positive experience depending on what's in your mind, what is in your heart, and what your dreams are. All of these things will come together to create an individual's unique attitude. That's pretty high-level thinking, I think. The second group, what they did is they decided to create a board game. And so for their presentations, the way to demonstrate their knowledge, they asked 6 students in the class to play their board game. And as the students were playing their board game, you could understand their answer to the question. For example, you would take a card, and the card said, you woke up in a really bad mood, you yelled at your mom, you didn't eat your breakfast, you showed up at school feeling really angry. Go back 6 spaces. So the only way to win the game was to have a very positive attitude. So those are some examples of backwards design and universal design. I'd like to take a moment to stop, give you a moment to think. Going back to our criteria for what is effective teaching practice, I'd like you to turn and again talk to your partner. Do you think backwards by design or universal design is an effective teaching practice? Do these teaching practices meet all of the criteria? Some of the criteria? Do you think you could use it? Do you think you already use it? You turn and talk to your partner. write down 10 things. So while you're waiting for everybody to finish their conversation, if you could find a piece of paper or somewhere in your program where you have a piece of paper you could write down 10 things. Okay, so here we go. Did you know that you had a test today? Did that work? The word test? Did everybody stop talking now? Okay, we're going to do a very quick activity to introduce the idea of differentiated instruction. On the piece of paper, this can be any piece of paper. You're not going to give it to me. This is going to be for you to keep. I'd like you to write down the names of 10 students you are working with. They can be in any of your classes. If you are a student, maybe write down 10 people who are in your class. On any piece of paper, write down the names of 10 students or 10 students who are in your class. Anywhere. Okay. Besides these names, I would like you to write down 3 things you know about these 10 people. Something that they like, something that they don't like, something that they're good at, something that they struggle with. 10 names, 3 things about each of those names. One of the most effective things we can do as a teacher is to know the people that we are working with. Sometimes, as a teacher, we have an ideal class in our head. We think, oh, I could just teach students who showed up on time, students who were not tired, students who didn't have their cell phones, students who loved to learn English. If I had those students in my class, oh, it would be wonderful to teach. And sometimes we have this ideal picture and we think, oh, my students last year were so much better. My students last year listened better, read better, talked better, everything. One of the most important things we can do as a teacher is really look at the students who we have right in front of us. Who are these people in front of you? Because last year's class is not the same as this year's class. Doesn't make one better, doesn't make one worse. As a teacher, we want to get to know them. So this is a test that I went to another workshop, and this is exactly what they asked me to do. Write down 10 students' names. No problem. Okay, write down 3 things about them. Okay, I can do that. And then she said, okay, now write 7 more things about each person. What? And she said, throughout the year, this can be your goal as a teacher. Every day, learn something new about someone in your class. Maybe what you're going to learn about them is, they are much better readers when they're reading with somebody else. If they can read with somebody else, they'll actually read, but if they work by themselves, they won't. Or, this person, every time I give them an online assignment, I ask them to go home and tweet, go onto a wall wisher, search on Google to get some information. They do it every single time. So I just start building a little class list where I write down every student's name, and each day I write down something about those students. Why would you want to know so much about your students? Well, in order to differentiate your instruction, you need to be able to know who you are working with. So differentiated instruction, they're thinking about playing chess. Teachers who use differentiated instruction are like master chess players. They look at the individuals in front of them. They know their strengths and weaknesses, the different moves that those individuals can make. And they start seeing how they can connect the different strengths of the individuals in the room to create the most effective instructional experiences. For example, some of my classes love doing readers theater. They love doing drama and getting up and talking, and it's a lot of fun. But my other class hates it. Oh my God, they don't want to do it ever. So as a teacher, what I can do is I can look at the pieces in front of me and think, how will I change my instruction just a little bit, use different strategies for the different individuals in front of me. If I don't know about my students, this is a very difficult job to do. So differentiated instruction, another word for it is responsive teaching, where instead of planning, like in the summer, thinking, okay, I'm going to plan my whole class, no matter who ends up in my class, we are going to do exactly what I planned. What I want to do is make sure that I'm adjusting my instructions, the strategies that I'm using to fit the individuals in front of me. For this to work, I need to have a lot of knowledge about my students, as well as I need to create a learning community. The teachers that you are going to hear speak today are going to talk quite a bit about how to create a classroom community. And it is a big part of differentiated instruction, because if you want your learners to take risks and try something new and engage in their learning, then you want to create a safe environment to do that. I'm going to show you just a quick couple of examples, because again, the teachers today are going to show you even more examples. When you want to try engaging strategies in your class, an important thing is to establish your classroom expectations or agreements. If you can decide on 5 things that everyone is going to do to make sure that they get smarter and they learn something during the semester, then it's a good idea to put it right on the wall. Because that way, whenever I'm teaching, I can always say, excuse me, Johnny, excuse me. Remember, at the end of listening, we talked about how we needed that in this classroom so that we can get smarter every day. So instead of me saying to them, hey, quiet, I'm talking, I say, hey, we agreed. We said we all were going to work on this. And as I constantly go back and go back and go back to this type of language, I am building a common agreement with my class. I am creating language I can use to talk about the type of learning environment that we need. The more language you create with them, the more you are able to discuss the type of environment you need. A couple other ways to get them to bond, really think about who they are. You can talk about their talents outside of the classroom as well as inside the classroom. Here's a really quick strategy you can do. You get a bunch of pieces of paper, you write down different talents. I can sing, I can dance, I can write, I love poetry, I am an athlete, I am a leader. And you put a whole bunch of different papers out in the classroom, and as they come in for the morning, you say, please autograph the poster. If you were a good dancer, go autograph that poster. And it's really interesting to watch them walk around, and they're excited to sign their name, and they learn more about each other. You can create a nice poster on your wall to remind you as a teacher, aha, there's some talents I can draw on in my class. Another one you can do is multiple intelligence. Lots of surveys online. And again, encourage students, we are all smart in different ways. So if you find that you are better at reading visuals, then read the visual. Then do it. Instead of saying, oh, I can't do just the reading, think about how you could do the reading. We want to make them more responsible. Here's another quick activity you can use in your classroom really fast. It's called Instant Bulletin Board. As the students walk into the class, you say, good morning, how are you? Please take this card. On the card, please write down something that nobody in the class knows about you yet. Maybe we've been together for 2-3 weeks. You've had lots of time to talk to each other, but maybe there's something you haven't told us yet. Make sure that it's okay for us all to know it, because we're going to find out who you are. So they write down something about themselves, and then you collect the card, distribute them randomly, and they have to go and find who is the person who rides a motorcycle. And then they write that person's name on the board, and they put it up on the Guess Who board. And what you've created is a very quick and easy classroom representation of the people in your class. As a teacher, you can constantly go back to this. Aha, what do I remember about this student that I can use to create a conversation, because I know if I have a positive relationship with them, they're more likely to listen, to do their work, as well as to ask me for help when they need it. So we're going to do a quick strategy, and luckily I had some volunteers this morning. This one is called 3 Things About Me, and you can use this as a teacher throughout the entire semester. I'm going to ask you to stand up and sit down repeatedly for the next couple of moments. So make sure if you have something on your lap, you move it to the side, and that you get ready to stand up. If you can answer yes to this question, please stand up. I am a teacher. Can you please give yourselves a round of applause if you were a teacher at school on Saturday? That's impressive. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you. Please keep standing if you can answer yes to this question. I am a student. Okay, so we have some students who got up early on Saturday morning and are here. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you very much, our future teachers. Please keep standing if you can answer yes to the following question. I have been to Bali, an island in Indonesia. And now as a teacher, what I could do, but maybe I won't do, because we are here in Venezuela, I could ask, when did you go to Indonesia? What was your favorite thing about Indonesia? What did you do in Indonesia? What is Bali like? Can you tell us why we should all go to Bali? And so now we can have a quick conversation. You can sit down. Thank you very much. And we can learn a little bit about each other. Let's do just one more. Okay, please stand up if you are a student or a teacher. Please keep standing if you like to listen to music. Okay. Please keep standing if you have traveled in Germany. Okay, again, now I have many students who I can draw and have a conversation, and if I wanted to be a little bit more safe, I can say, can you turn and talk to the people in your area about what Germany was like? Can you turn and talk to people around you about what Germany was like? Can you turn and talk to people around you about what Germany is like? A really quick 5-10-minute activity in your classroom. Thank you for standing. Gives people an opportunity to relax, learn about each other. Let's say at the end of a lesson, I have 5 minutes left, what do I do with my class? Pull out the cards. Don't do them all in one day. Keep them, because you're going to create a little bit of anticipation for the students who haven't read their cards. So they're going to think, ooh, maybe she'll read my card today. The other thing that it does is it changes the way that the students look at each other. They're not just another face in their English class. That's the person who went to Bali. That's the person who went to Germany. That's the person who likes Italian cooking. And they start seeing each other much more as individuals. They start seeing that they are more of a team. And when you put them into cooperative groups, the more they know about each other, the more likely they are to actually focus on the learning. Okay. So we're going to go for about 5 more minutes. What I'd like to do is just quickly introduce some more of the topics that you're going to hear the teachers talk about this morning. So we're going to move ahead in the PowerPoint, and we're going to move ahead to assessment for learning. And that is on page 14. So I should animate your PowerPoint. Okay, we're going to do a quick demonstration. We have some individuals in the group today who have given a piece of paper. And we're going to give them 1 minute, and we're going to see if they can achieve this task. So we're going to be the observers, and they're going to be the actors. Okay, so you know who you are, right? You got the pieces of paper that I gave you? You have 1 minute. I would like you to create this object. You can see it. It's on the PowerPoint too. You have 1 minute. I'd like you to build this model. Okay? let's talk about assessment for learning. They're busy. Okay, assessment for learning has 6 parts to it. For assessment for learning, you should always try to do 6 things. Start with some learning intention. Again, just like backwards by sign, you got to know where your end goal is, but we might want to tell our students what that goal is. So for example, today when you came into the presentation, I started off by giving you some objectives so that you would know, what are we here today, what are we working on. The next thing that we want to do with our students is we want to establish some criteria. We want to make sure that they understand what they need to do to be successful, but I don't have to do it by myself. Because you know what? Building rubrics at home takes hours. Oh my gosh, I don't know how many nights I've said, gotta write a rubric. Oh my god, another time, gotta make another rubric. Guess what? Get them to do it for you. You ask them, okay, well what do you think you have to do to be successful? So here's an example. My English 10 class has been working on oral presentations. We've done it about 3 times. This is what they were able to create for themselves. They said for them to be successful, they needed to do these things. So easy for me as a teacher. All I have to do is, okay, what do you have to do? What do you have to do? How do you think you'll be successful? Write it up on the board, or I can say, you guys tell me what a perfect example is. Your group tell me what a pretty good example is. Your group tell me what an okay example is. And then I just write it up on the board, take a picture, maybe I'll go home and I'll type it up, finished. Pretty easy for me. But the nice thing is, they all know what the criteria is because they're the ones who decided what they needed to do. So if they tell me, oh, I didn't know what to do. Really? You told me. Another part for assessment for learning is having descriptive feedback. Descriptive feedback means that I don't give them a grade. I don't want to give them a grade right away. As soon as I give them a number, they stop working. 7 out of 10. Good enough for me. I will not look at it again. But if I come back and say, you know what? This is pretty good, but if you were able to do this and this, you could really create a better project. Oh, well, I will do that then. Hopefully it works like that. But the more descriptive feedback I'm giving them means that I'm giving them more opportunity to improve. Again, if you were coaching somebody to play soccer, you wouldn't stand on the edge of the soccer field and yell at them, 6, 3, 2, 7. They have no idea what numbers I'm yelling at them for. Because just like us, our students don't necessarily understand the numbers. They need the descriptive feedback, and that's why rubrics, again, that they create for you are very helpful. Okay, so let's see how our students have done. We've given them a minute, and we've asked them to create this object. So I'm just going to ask them if they can hold their objects up for us to see. So as a teacher, I haven't really done a very good job because I just said, okay, ready, set, go. I gave them no feedback. I didn't really tell them the point of doing it, so I didn't give them a learning objective, and I certainly haven't supported them. Well, let's see how we did. Well, it's pretty good. It's got sides, but no top. This one, oh, it has a top, but sorry, the sides that's really not right. Okay, we'll come over here. Oh my goodness. This one you have to hold it together. Oh, it has to stand by itself. Sorry. Okay. Can we give him a round of applause? Thank you very much. Sometimes, this is what we do as teachers to our students. We say to them, here's the task, ready, set, go, and then maybe I kind of ignore them for a few moments. And I, do some marking, do something, work, and then I come over and say, no, not good, or give them a mark. But I haven't supported them throughout the learning process. There's been no assessment along the way. Also, I haven't provided them with the materials that would help them to be more successful. Maybe if I had given them an outline, or perhaps if I had given them a model plus instructions, it would have been much easier for them to achieve the task. This is what assessment for learning is. It's making sure that the end goal is clear at the beginning, helping them along the way by assessing in different ways as they progress, and then at the end, hopefully, what you will be able to establish is that your students have ownership over what they have created. Ownership because they knew what they needed to do to achieve it, and they could evaluate their own work, and they know the quality of the work that they have done, and they don't even need your mark. Because they're like, yeah, I know it's very good, or yeah, I know it's not very good. But the more assessment for learning, the more time you can delay giving them a mark, the more chances that they are going to work towards the final goal. We are very close to being out of time completely, and I want to make sure that we have time for questions. So what I'm going to do is this final part, is I need you to turn and talk to your partner again, just one more time. Do you already know about assessment for learning? What are some of the different ways that you assess your students at the beginning, and at the middle, and at the end of the learning process, so you don't end up with a scenario like we had today, where everybody really tried, but we weren't really able to get to the end goal that we were looking for. So please turn and talk to your partner. What do you think about assessment for learning? What do you think about differentiated instruction? Are they effective teaching practices? Why or why not? Okay, thank you very much again for being such a really participating crowd and talking to each other. Just some final words before we go today. Effective teaching practices are teaching practices that are changing the interactions in our classroom. We want to move away from the teacher at the front of the room, just 40 students in front of them, the only person talking is the teacher, to classrooms where we have more interactions for teacher to smaller groups of students, maybe more one-on-one or one teacher to 3 or 4 students. We also want to increase the interactions between our students, doing things like turn to talk, giving them things like cooperative learning activities, getting them to be working together. And as you'll see the teachers' presentations today, they are using their practices in their classroom to create these different types of interactions. As you walk away from today's presentation, our objective at the beginning was that you would be able to think about your mental model, about what you believe about teaching and learning, or maybe some of the things I said today agreed with what you already thought, maybe they've added to it. We introduced some different teaching practices, backwards design, universe design, assessment for learning, differentiated instruction. The last thing I asked you to do was to think about one thing that you could take with you this morning that you think that you're going to try. This is my favorite symbol for teaching. It's actually from a surfboard, but I think it works very well with teaching. Teaching is about endless progression. We're lifelong learners. We're always trying to get better at what we're doing in our classroom, but it doesn't mean you have to do it in a day or in a week. It's not the teacher you are today, it's the teacher you are working on becoming. So please, Take one or two things away with you today. Try one or two things. No one is asking you to reinvent your practice overnight. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. And I'll put up the ranking order, the top 10 that the teachers in Canada chose. And if you have questions about it, you can come and ask me. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And I look forward to hearing the presentations from our teachers this morning. Thank you.
This is the third time I've heard this speech, and I find myself still taking notes. So if it's not enough for you, with another one for tomorrow, so you can join us in Tainan to hear this wonderful speech again. Now, are there questions that you would like to ask? Questions? It's always very hard to ask questions, right? Too scary. Yes?
Explain a small detail here. What assessment for learning? The table for assess for learning. There is an item. It's called ownership. Would you please explain what is that and how do we assess that? Thank you.
Okay, I would love to explain. I just didn't get a chance to go into detail, so thank you. So the ownership part for learning looks at the more students know about how their performance is going to be assessed, and the more you involve them in the process by talking about what makes a good short story, what makes an okay short story, what's not a very good short story, the more you talk about the assessment, decide as a class how something should be evaluated or marked, you will often find that they can create ownership over their own evaluation. So they can tell you the quality of their work, and they can explain why their work is good or not very good. So Assessment for Learning moves more towards student ownership of their work, so that they're not dependent on you to tell them if it's good or bad. They can tell you what they think about their work. The more ownership they feel over it, the more they feel that it's theirs, that they can evaluate it, usually the more they will invest in the final product. When we give students tests, we give them very little ownership. They don't get to design the test, they don't get to mark the test, and it's all about me giving them a mark. They don't own it. So we want to try to move away to incorporate more forms of assessment where they own it. Is that okay? Thank you for your comment.
Are there other questions? Well, feel free to provide comments to us. You know how to reach us, and you know how to reach Helen through her Twitter. So feel free to give comments throughout the day, and we'll be around. So if you have questions, feel free to come and talk to us and talk to Helen. I guess Helen would like to finish up with.
I'll just say this is the ranking for teachers in Canada. This is how the group of teachers that we work with, how they ranked it. So they said, number one, most important thing they can do in their classroom is differentiate their instruction. Get to know their students, know their strengths and weaknesses, and determine which strategies to use based on the students who are actually in front of them. The second one they said, most important, backwards by design, universal design, and then assessment for learning. What they decided was, if you are using these 4 things in your classroom, you're doing fine. Because probably if you're doing these 4 things, you're doing the rest of these teaching practices as a part of these 4 models. So if I were walking away from this presentation and thinking about what would I really like to learn more about, I would really look at these 4 topics and pay attention to the presentations today that teachers present, because you can find evidence of all 4 of these in the work that they are working on.
Well, let's give Helen a round of applause for a great presentation. Now I will turn. I was supposed to hand the mic microphone to our assistant today, who will be announcing for our coffee break, but I think he has disappeared. But in any case, anyway, we have prepared coffee and little pastry for everybody. We know it's a very long day, so we want to keep you well fed. So here is Carolyn.
各位老师和同学，大家好，抱歉到接到大家时间。那就像刚刚说，等一下就茶叙时间。那这边做几件事情，简单宣布一下，请各位老师和同学注意，就是各位老师所有在全国教师进行